Hello and welcome. The manhunt is ongoing and has stretched far longer than anyone had expected. Uganda's opposition leader, Bobi Wine, is still in hiding. And he is not silent. Every day the messages appear. Short videos, defiant words, but his location still unknown. Wine's posts spread fast. They light up screens and garner attention. But while this one man keeps talking to the country, an entire security force is trying to find him. And it's been over 10 days. This is Uganda, days after a disputed election and still on edge. Bobi Wine went into hiding shortly after Uganda's presidential election on January the 15th.
Fellow Ugandans, my name is Chagulanyi Sentamu Robert, also known as Bobi Wine. Today is Saturday the 17th of January 2026 and the time is 9 a.m. in the morning. Amidst that raid, I was able to use my skills and escape my house. But I know they're looking for me. But even if they succeed and get me and do whatever, I want to say this to you, fellow Ugandans. First and foremost, we reject whatever is being declared by Mr. Byabakama, because those so-called results that they're declaring are fake and they don't in any way reflect what happened at the polling stations or what is at the declaration forms. And therefore, those results, the so-called results, are fake.
In Uganda, political tensions have once again risen sharply, drawing national and international attention to the country's fragile balance between authority and dissent. At the center of the latest controversy is opposition leader Bobi Wine, whose public remarks and online statements have reignited debate about freedom of expression, the role of the military in politics, and the future of democratic space in East Africa. Bobi Wine, whose real name is Robert Kyagulanyi, is no stranger to confrontation with the Ugandan state. A former musician turned politician, he has become one of the most prominent critics of President Yoweri Museveni's government, which has been in power for nearly decades. His popularity, particularly among young Ugandans, has made him both a political force and a persistent target of state scrutiny. The latest episode began with a series of statements that Bobi Wine shared publicly, appearing to mock or taunt Uganda's army chief, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. The general is not only the head of the armed forces, but also the son of President Museveni, a fact that has long fueled speculation about dynastic politics within Uganda's ruling establishment. In recent years, General Kainerugaba has gained a reputation for provocative social media posts, many of which blur the line between military authority and political commentary. His statements have, at times, alarmed observers both inside and outside Uganda, prompting questions about civil-military relations in a country where the army has historically played a central role in governance. Against this backdrop, Bobi Wine's defiant tone struck a nerve. According to analysts, the opposition leader's remarks were less about personal confrontation and more about symbolism. By publicly challenging the army chief, Bobi Wine was tapping into broader public anxieties, concerns about the militarization of politics, the shrinking space for opposition voices, and the increasing visibility of the president's family within the state's power structures. The government's response was swift but measured. There were no immediate arrests or dramatic showdowns. Instead, security agencies increased their presence around opposition figures, while official statements emphasized law and order. The absence of a direct confrontation, however, did not go unnoticed. Supporters of Bobi Wine portrayed it as evidence that intimidation tactics were losing their effectiveness. Government allies, on the other hand, dismissed the episode as political theater designed to provoke attention. To understand why this moment has resonated so widely, it is important to examine the deeper political context. President Museveni has ruled Uganda since 1986, initially coming to power after a protracted guerrilla war. Over the decades, his government has overseen periods of stability and economic growth, but it has also faced persistent criticism over human rights, electoral integrity, and restrictions on political freedoms. Bobi Wine emerged onto the political scene as an outsider, using music and popular culture to connect with a generation that had known no other president. His 2021 presidential campaign galvanized millions, but also led to violent clashes, arrests, and international condemnation of the state's response. Since then, the opposition leader has remained under constant pressure. His movements are often restricted, his rallies disrupted, and his supporters detained. Yet despite these obstacles, he has continued to command a loyal following both within Uganda and across the diaspora. The involvement of General Muhoozi Kainerugaba adds another layer of complexity. As army chief, his role is constitutionally nonpartisan. Yet his frequent public statements on political matters have challenged conventional norms. Some of his remarks have been interpreted as expressions of loyalty to his father, others as hints of future political ambition. For critics, this raises troubling questions about the separation of powers. Is the military becoming an extension of political authority? Or is it simply reflecting the realities of a state where historical legacies continue to shape governance? The government insists that the army remains professional and loyal to the Constitution. Officials argue that isolated comments should not be overinterpreted and that Uganda's stability depends on a strong, disciplined security sector. However, civil society groups and opposition figures remain unconvinced. They point to a pattern of military involvement in civilian affairs, including election security operations and the suppression of protests. For them, Bobi Wine's confrontation is not an isolated incident but part of a broader struggle over the direction of the country. International reactions have been cautious. Western governments and human rights organizations have long expressed concern about political freedoms in Uganda, but they have also maintained close security and economic ties with Kampala. Statements following the latest episode emphasized restraint, dialogue, and respect for democratic principles, stopping short of direct condemnation. Regionally, the situation is being watched closely. Uganda plays a key role in East African security, contributing troops to peacekeeping missions and serving as a strategic partner in regional counterterrorism efforts. Any perception of internal instability has implications beyond its borders. For supporters of Bobi Wine, the fact that the opposition leader remains free, despite his defiance, is being interpreted as a small but meaningful victory. On social media, hashtags praising his resilience trended briefly, accompanied by messages portraying him as a symbol of courage in the face of intimidation. Government supporters responded with their own narrative, accusing him of provoking tension and undermining national unity. They argue that public taunts directed at military leadership are irresponsible and potentially dangerous. Between these competing narratives lies a deeper question: what does political dissent look like in modern Uganda? The country's constitution guarantees freedom of expression and political participation. Yet, in practice, the boundaries of acceptable dissent remain tightly contested. For opposition figures, navigating those boundaries often involves calculated risks. Bobi Wine's strategy has consistently relied on visibility. By keeping attention focused on himself and his cause, he limits the ability of authorities to act quietly or without scrutiny. This approach has earned him admiration and criticism. Some analysts argue that public confrontation strengthens his support base while complicating the government's response. Others caution that such tactics could provoke harsher measures in the future. As for General Kainerugaba, his silence following the remarks has been interpreted in multiple ways. Supporters see restraint, critics see embarrassment. Analysts see calculation. In a political environment as tightly managed as Uganda's, silence can be as meaningful as speech. What happens next remains uncertain. Uganda is approaching another critical phase in its political cycle with local elections, internal party dynamics, and growing youth dissatisfaction shaping the landscape. Economic pressures, including inflation and unemployment, add further strain. In this context, even symbolic confrontations take on outsized significance. They reflect not just personal rivalries, but deeper struggles over power, legitimacy, and the future direction of the state. For now, Bobi Wine continues to speak. The army chief remains in command, and the president maintains his grip on power. But beneath the surface, the questions raised by this episode linger about authority, accountability, and how long Uganda's political equilibrium can hold.